I chose Felicity City in California as a calibration target, a practice target, and I added it to my target pool with random numbers assigned to it, thinking that someday I would roll across it and have a very boring remote viewing session where I could practice seeing some of the odd things that are on the landscape of it. Um, Jacques Estelle is the owner of the 2,800 acres of land out in the southeast corner of California. I added this target thinking it'd be cool because it would confuse me, because it has a pyramid, it has a stairwell that leads to nowhere, it has an odd shape in the center. But what I actually found was a whole lot more. This session evidently connected to a previous session I did, which I'll link down below, of Mount Wilson Ranch with Carl Crusher, target 7294, in which these monoliths where reality is created or portals happen were under the ground, and I remote viewed them. The same kinds of monoliths showed up in this target. This, about the first 10 minutes, and I'll put timestamps below to kind of help you skip to where you want to easily, but after about the first 10 minutes or so, the first 10 minutes are me sort of learning the language of my subconscious and noting it for myself, because I learned from these videos too. Things like the pyramid at Felicity City, I viewed it as like a string of pearls or clouds that were big and then got smaller as it went up. Other interesting things about this site, as I approached the plaque in the center of the pyramid that says the center of the world, I couldn't go through it. Now, granted, I was blindly remote viewing this. I didn't know what I was viewing. I just saw like a glowing orb with all of these spirally string things floating around it. I didn't know what they were. Upon feedback, learning about the target, when I was remote viewing this, I couldn't go through the orb, which was the plaque in the center of the pyramid, but I went around it. And when I went around it, I went into a whole other reality. Or in other words, I went into what I called the emitter, which was a space that created reality. The reality that you're watching this in, according to the remote viewing session, is sort of like a holographic box or a holographic sphere, a holographic space created by other beings. And with those beings, I was seeing the monoliths, cracking open with stars. And then I went a layer deeper beyond them to the next truest reality that emits them. And I met the thought form, or the Greek god Apollo. Just met Apollo. I didn't even realize it at the time. I didn't even realize it when I learned the feedback until 3 days later when I finished editing and parsing together the video. I realized, whoa, there was this being that was shaped like the sun that was playing a guitar, and there was music coming out, and it was like rocking out, and it had all these uplifting, positive things to say, two of which are the Delphic maxims, which are 2 of 3, which are at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. Even the name, Felicity City, felicity means intense joy or hopefulness, has a direct connection to Apollo and Apollo's ethos. So that was absolutely fascinating. So it seems like, according to this, reality is layered, and it's just thought forms all the way infinitely, up and down, left and right, in and out. And I feel that I may have remote viewed, when I talk in the video that's coming up about spirals that are coming off of things. They're like vortexes of energy. There was a spiral that came off of the pyramid at Felicity City. There was a spiral that comes off of the church, although it feels different to me. It felt like abrasive sand going against me, and sort of pushing against me. But all of these wishes that people are asked to make in the center of the pyramid, I could see them as these spirally things spiraling around the orb, which had a direct connection to Apollo. And I didn't even realize it until later. When you look at the overall landscape of Felicity City, in the center is an 8-armed shape that looks just like a sun, in between a church on a hill and a pyramid at the other end. So Jacques Estelle, who founded this, I think that his intention, I think it's a good place. I think that it is one giant ritual. And I think that people go there in hopes of bettering things for all of humanity, because if you walk through it, there's all of these granite monuments to different moments in history and interesting facts that he put up. But inside the pyramid at the center of the world where people are told to make a wish. I saw their wishes. I saw their emotion behind these wishes. And the coolest thing about this whole session was that it went full circle. I started remote viewing it, couldn't get through that plaque on the ground, so I went around it, popped into a reality where beings create this as like a 3D matrix, popped through their reality to a totally mental plane where this thought form or god Apollo was, and then zoomed out even further to where all of that was even just a blip on a larger curly string floating around in a void. I mean, talk about a session. I thought when I created this target that it would be an evidential practice calibration session, but it's turned out to be so much more. And if I can find a way to get in contact with Mr. Estelle or go there in person, I'd be absolutely blown away. And I want to leave you guys with a positive message here. If we are in fact in some sort of a 3D holographic matrix or thought prison, you might not be able to go through it to get out of it, but you can go around it just by setting your intention. I know that sounds crazy, but I think there's a lot of people who are going to view this video and it's going to kick up some fear. So I just wanted to address that really quick. Whatever beings there are that are on the next level down or up, I guess, for whatever reason, if they're keeping us here, you don't stay here as long as you are aware of them and what they're doing. And it's my strong feeling that when you pass, if you know what you're doing and go the right way with your intention and don't stay stuck here, you just bypass it and go to a greater place. So without further ado, enjoy. Already have an initial connection to it. Data packet is gentle and natural, reminds me of being outside with its energy, something similar to a waterfall flowing maybe in the shape of a woman's hair as it kind of rolls back off the back of her head, down, and then kind of flips up a little bit at the bottom. All right, here we go. Setting my intention with my circle, curiosity, and truth. Target 2, 6, 8, 5. Ooh, this is a neat ideogram. I've never had one of these. Rocketed up at an arc, little jumbled mess there, little ball, and then up another arc, another jumbled ball. Came down just a little bit, but then arced back up. Initial impressions from this was an emotional reaction of enjoyment, easygoing nature to this. There was a gentle flow to this. It was good. So I'm going to probe the first part of the ideogram here for data. So symbolic data. Interesting. I'm getting sort of like a pearl necklace, like beads. Not necessarily that, but like something, like things stacked one atop another. Slightly round. Yeah, like beads in a line or in a stack. And that's symbolic. All right, now I'm going to switch it over to emotional. How do I feel about this part of the ideogram? The first arcing up and over. It feels divine, sacred, positive, certainly positive, and joyful is a word. I want to say the word silver lining here. Hope. That's the word I want to use. Hope. It feels hopeful. All right, so moving forward to physical. How about physical touch? What does this part of the ideogram feel like? It's like something I can kind of squish into. What does that remind me of? It would remind me of like a plastic, like billowy plastic. I'm reminded of like what's that called? After a jet goes by and it leaves the jet stream, the jet trail in the air. There's like how it like, the jet stream gets carried by the winds a little bit and it like stretches it out and puffs it up a little bit. I'm seeing like these sort of white puffy donuts stacked atop one another, where they were like a pearl necklace before. Now they're sort of the shape I just described. I'm not sure if I'm getting anything smell-wise. I want to say possibly like a smell of pine or outdoors. When I taste it, I taste what I imagine concrete or asphalt would taste like. Not really getting anything for auditory. So now I'm going to go into literal. What do I literally see at the target per the tasking? It may be the ideogram itself, but I'm just sort of seeing a slice in the air, which is identical to the shape of this arc of the ideogram. Let me probe it a little further. Nothing. So, moving on to the next part of the ideogram. It's interesting. Lately, I've noticed that my ideograms are teaching me there's these knots in them. It's always like a line of thread that goes up, does some action, threads out a little bit more. There's another knotted up ball, and then finishes. There's always like these two knotted balls of stuff in the ideogram. So that's interesting. So the first one, let's play with this. So bringing this into my awareness and initial impressions regarding symbolism. So getting something kind of like barnacles that would be out in ocean water, all sort of along the side of something. So symbolically speaking, a bunch of barnacles that are stuck on something. What else for symbolism for this knotted up ball? Okay, getting a shape. It sort of reminds me of like the letter L, but slightly squeezed in on itself. Symbolically, what does this shape represent? Squeezing, a squeeze. It's reminding me now like the thing that you use to squeeze orange juice out of an orange. Anything else for symbolism here? Nothing else for symbolism, so I'm going to move along to my emotional impact. How does it feel at this section of the ideogram? Choppy, chaotic, confused. I don't really feel like I'm on the signal line right now. I feel like I'm just a guy sitting here with my eyes closed. Like I'm not really remote viewing. Interesting. So physically, at this first jumbled up ball, it feels like a bunch of holes in something that I can kind of poke my finger into. And they kind of like fit perfectly or conform around my fingertip. And there's this sort of spiraling down of this texture. So it's like, imagine a spiral shape. Oh, a slinky is a perfect example, but thicker and made of like some sort of material like plaster that's wet and gooey that you can stick your finger in, and it like wraps around your finger, and then you kind of pull your finger out, and then it like slowly like melds again back to its original shape. What's up with the spiraling down part? Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of like lighthouse steps, the way it spirals down, and it goes counterclockwise. Let's get a literal look at this. What is this? Just seeing something white in the foreground, like a sheet hanging, blocking my view. Let's move through this, or past this. This blocking thing doesn't really help me, so I'm going to move to the next most truthful layer of reality and view it on this section of the ideogram. Interesting. So now I'm just seeing in my mind's eye this sort of floating, it's not quite spherical, but there's an overall spherical shape, but with sharp edges all around it. Like if you took a hammer to a bunch of mussel shells and then hot glued them to the outside of a tennis ball, they'd be sharp and jagged here and there, not really following any form or pattern. And that's what I'm seeing. It's just floating. It's quite similar to the shape of the ideogram itself, actually. Anything else for literal visual data of this portion of the ideogram? Interesting. So it's very rudimentary, but just a very basic, vague outline of like a sailboat sail shape, like a kind of a loose triangle. Well, maybe that was the original sheet that I was seeing, that sort of cream-colored white thing. Now maybe I'm looking at it from a different angle. Anything else visually? Just sort of a box shape with sort of a greenish color to it, perhaps. All right, I'm going to move on now to the next arc that went up above this one. And I'm going to open this up. I think I'm just going to let it flow and try to determine what feels symbolic versus literal and so on, because I'm not getting much with this sort of rigid, structured approach. When I embody this next part of the ideogram, it's as if I am gently propelling myself up and forward, but there's this intense rush of energetic push sort of in the opposite direction of me, all around me, but especially on the left side of me, pushing the opposite direction that I'm going. So if you can imagine like a jellyfish gently pushing itself in some direction in the ocean, now imagine there's a rush, like a sea current, all around it, but especially on the left of it, that's pushing in the opposite direction. There's this strong, energetic rush against me on my left side, and I can feel it going past me. It feels like sand flying by and hitting me, or like bubbles, something. There's numerous tiny particles doing this. What is the significance of this, literally? Something about the particles eventually eroding the entire structure of whatever this is that I'm embodying. It's like over enough time they would wear it away. It sort of reminds me of like sand, eroding a structure, or like a cliff face. Given enough years and wind, it would eventually like chew right through it. What is the most significant feature of this that I would regret not observing per the tasking of this target in this section of the ideogram? I'm being brought back to that stack of pearls, which is more like a bunch of bulbous white donut shapes stacked on top of each other. And I should have said before, the stack, they get thinner as they go up. And I'm seeing this just going on and on forever into the distance, into the darkness, like it's, if it were a rope or a cord with these things stacked around it. Like the cord is going through them, and they're all connected on the cord, and they're just going forever forward, kind of floating. What's significant about that? Daisy chain? Linkage? Something different is coming in visually. I'm going to explore it for a minute and then report. Hang on. So I was getting this impression of like a storm drain, but the kind where there's like grates in the front of it that divert the water into 8 different entrances. Something that divides an initial stream, such as this long rope thing. It meets this and is divided up into at least 8 or more different, separate, unique streams or chords. Okay, now I'm seeing a central point with a circular shape in it, and from it there are 4 arms equidistantly spaced coming out from it. Kind of reminds me of like a sewage plant, how they have that big tank where the water sits and there's like a circle in the center. So now let's go to the next part of the ideogram, which was the second ball or cluster or knot that connected above the arc. So I'm just going to grab that, bring it into my awareness. What is the most significant aspect of this per the tasking? For a moment I got something rotating and light refracting off of it. It was really pretty to look at, sort of like a bunch of crystal or glass. This is symbolic, and I feel like the different lights that bounce off of it have their own individual meanings. The first color I saw was amber, so I'm going to go into that. What does this mean? This amber part feels warm, inviting, nostalgic. So this amber has a sort of expansive quality that comes forward towards me and envelops all around me. It feels like home. It feels comforting. It feels loving and powerful. Right now I'm moving to a violet color on this slowly spinning jagged crystal ball. And the violet feels symbolic for the ending of something. It's taking up like the bottom third of my visual space. And it's expansive too, but it's sort of beneath me and flatter. Feels like the violet is symbolic of something during nighttime. What else about this? It's just very gentle and soft. Is there anything literal about this part? Seeing something kind of rising up and then, like on a display, something cycling down very, very quickly amongst all these different options to choose from, like a digital display or a readout. And it's like, if you turned a knob or pulled a lever, it would lower these things. But it went by very fast. There's a bluish color that borders on violet, and this takes up the top third of my visual area, specifically the left, and there's a white color to it that slowly blends into blue. It just reminds me of the way an oil painter like Bob Ross would mix paints on the easel. There'd be a blob of blue and then a little a little thin stream of white to make silver, for example. I feel like the white in it can be teased out and pulled and kind of curled. And as I do that, it sort of makes a little spiral that goes clockwise. And now getting visual of a mixture of the white and blue in a spiral, sort of merging together as they twist and spiral together down to a central point, like a core. Interesting. So now I'm being brought back to my initial impression, which was these sort of floating strings or chords. But now I'm seeing many of them, and they're all sort of arcing towards a central light or point of luminosity. And there's different colors of these spirals. They're each a chord, but they're like spirals. Do you guys remember those old telephones that had the cords on them that would kind of kink up so that like you could walk a few feet away with them and they wouldn't pull the phone jack out of the wall? It's sort of like those. Interesting. This is all very cosmic. This is all very like theoretical physics. Like if I were trying to visualize something to explain like string theory or timelines or it's like different portals that lead to different places. It's really interesting. Yeah, that's what this is, because I'm looking at individual spirals, like a yellow one first, and it brought me to like this sort of barren, dry land, and then this green one that was mainly like a water-covered planet. These are not only different locations, but different times, and some of them don't go into that central luminous ball. Some of them like go, horizontal and don't even travel into it. Most of them do, but like this whole scene is very chaotic. It reminds me of like an abstract painting. So what happens when I go into the big orb of light? I can't. Wow, this is the first time that I've ever tried a movement command. And when it starts, it ends as abruptly as it started. It's like I'm about to dive in and then it's not even possible to. Interesting. Like I feel like if you're playing like Skyrim or something and you get to like the edge of something where you can't travel any further, it doesn't show you a wall there, but your guy like can't move forward anymore and he just stands there with his feet moving like he's walking, but he's not going anywhere. Interesting. And when I approach the ball to go into it, it feels flat. Like all of a sudden the depth of it is missing and it's not there. Is there a deeper layer of truth that I can connect to here with this ball that's now flat all of a sudden? Interesting. So there's like two sides to this. There's what I was describing, and then I can't move through it, but I can like turn it in my mind, and when I turn it enough, what is that? From left to right, there's this whole other side to it that is like sterile and very sciencey and dry and technical. That's the word. It's fascinating. It reminds me of the Truman Show, like how the sky was like fake, and if you could just like get through it or go around it and see like, oh my god, like it's not at all what it looks like. And now I feel like I'm just standing in a big empty half circle domed room. No one's here. It's just me, and I've made it past the simulation of this depth that flattens as you approach the central ball of light. I almost feel like saying like HELLO really loud, but anytime I do that, things all of a sudden like show up that I don't want there. So let me just explore this silently for a moment. There's definitely structure to this place. There are these like arched, tubular support beams here and there along the sides of the walls. Everything is a dull gray, white color. It's very bland looking in here. Kind of reminds me of like an airport hangar, like where like jets are stored. It's interesting because every room is this shape and it just goes on and on and on. Kind of reminds me of a fractal. Like I could just keep traveling through these rooms forever and they're just all identical. Oh, interesting, but this shape reminds me of my second impulse of the donuts on a string, or like pearl necklace. What is significant about this space? Literally. You'll have a tough time leaving, I just heard. What is this space used for symbolically? Trap? Anything else regarding symbolism of this space? It's really interesting. I feel very seen now. You know how I entered this space feeling alone? I feel very seen, and whatever is seeing me is now painting an inaccurate representation. They're trying to make it 3D again and not so sterile and dry and scientific feeling. Like they're making it feel like, so like the floor, for example, right? There are rooms that are flat, but there's other rooms that are like have like a slight dome to them in the floor. They're trying to make it look like I'm standing in like a volcano in this little domed part in the floor. It's okay, guys. I know that this isn't a volcano. Is there anything that you can share with me about this space? I come here out of respect and curiosity. I don't feel like they're sharing anything with me, but I do see what looks like kind of insect eyes with these sort of like reflections on the glossy exterior of an eyeball. There are these shapes of like cubes and stars in them, like monoliths. And then it's like the monoliths are the building blocks of time. It's so interesting. I'm seeing that the monoliths are sort of sectors of time, and the edges that make the monolith are the boundaries of that existence or that reality. And there are numerous monoliths, and it's like these guys with the insect eyes just sort of dream these up and then somehow create them. And it's like a flood of stars spews out like a mist. The monolith cracks open, and there's just a flood of stars. Like if you blow on a dandelion, and all the seeds scatter to the wind. What is this literal significance of seeing this in the eyeball? Well, I gotta say, guys, having gone from like a three-dimensional space to then this like sterile, clean environment that's like moments before entering it showed me like the light that all the spirals were going into and it going flat and then kind of going around it and into this space. It makes me feel like what's real is really unreal, and what is really real is somewhere beyond the thoughts and dreams of these insect-eyed things. So then let's focus on that. Let's focus on the real reality, where the insect-eyed beings look like. So first, I want to look at you, your whole body. What do you look like? So I'm getting what reminds me of, not larva, but like a chrysalis. And sitting like how a cat sits on the edge of a table with its butt on the ground, its back is rounded, and there's this sort of sharp angle up where the rest of their spine continues to their head. But it's like a chrysalis shape. Whatever these things are, they grow up like that. Like, they grow taller. I mean, I'm AOLing the shit out of like a mantis being right now, but I'm trying not to say it because I don't. So, there are other beings here. I feel like I'm seeing grays. So, there's at least two different kinds of beings here. And I'm going to call this place the emitter, because just outside of it was that like sun shape that was actually flat. I feel like I'm in someone's like scientific playground. Like this is their hall of just creating whatever they want. So what does their real reality look like? Show me the most significant literal aspects of it. Really interesting. I feel like I was just seeing space for a moment, maybe a blue star or blue galaxy, and then I was, just like before, hit a wall and couldn't go any further. And when that happened, the little gray dude that was kind of peeking out from behind the insect thing, it's like the pause button on that reality got pressed and everything froze up. Okay, so let's do what we did before. Let's go to the next most truthful layer beyond this. Beyond this reality. Okay, great. So now I'm just seeing a giant sun in front of me, or like a giant light. Not white, but golden. But almost cartoony, like if you were to draw it. Wow, and this reality feels completely non-tangible, like all thought form. Honestly, guys, I feel like it's like turtles all the way down. It's thought forms all the way up, all the way down, and in every direction, inward and outward. And I'm just sort of popping through different levels of realities into the reality that created the next one, and then the reality that created that one, and so on and so on. Because in this reality, it's just this like this sun. Let me see if I can communicate with it. Hello. I'm remote viewing and came across you. I approach you with honor, respect, and curiosity and benevolence. What can you tell me about this reality that you are in? Or show me? Okay, I'm being shown something symbolic. It looks like a headphone jack. I'm seeing it just plugging in. Okay. I'm just seeing the sun embody the concept of like hitting a guitar note really hard and the sound just reverberating out. It's like, wow. Like, do you guys remember the opening of Back to the Future when Marty has the guitar and like the giant speaker behind him and he hits the guitar string and it like launches him forward and blows up the house or something? It's like that. So whatever this light thing is like an emitter. It's so interesting. There's like layers of emitters, and like one is more powerful than the next. So it's like these layers upon layers upon layers, and like the further out you go, the louder the emitters are. And this layer of reality feels much lighter, much like easier. There's ease here. It's great. It's like beyond even an astral realm. It's like a thought realm, like a mental plane. Like I feel like if dreams could go somewhere to exist as within their own reality, that's what this space would be. This is like the dreamland. And I'm getting such a ambivalent, carefree, rock and roll nature from this sunlight being. I'd say if it's anything, it's slightly masculine, but it's just telling me to rock out. It's just like, just express yourself. Just be what you are and emit yourself. And maybe that's the ethos of how everything works with all the thought forms. Wow. All right, I'm going to ask it. What is the single most important thing that you would like to share with me that is true? Just to have fun. Interesting. Okay. Does this reality go even deeper? Is there a layer beyond you? Let me try to jump into you now. So I jumped into it, and now I'm just in a void. I'm just surrounded by black. This is very hard to describe. I feel like the golden orb of light that I jumped into is still a part of me, but it's much, much smaller. And that's crazy because it felt infinite before. But it's like it's smaller and it's a part of me, and it's like I'm a tall, oh my god, full circle. I'm a tall, spirally, ropey thing floating around, and that's a very tiny part of me. It's like way down below on some part of my spiral. And I'm just floating through. It's not even space. It's just like a void. Oh my god, guys, this is crazy. How do I feel like I'm just floating along on one of these spiral things and just ambling along, stretching here and there as needed. You know, in a way, this reminds me of DNA. But at this point, I have no scale or reference for size. I don't know if this is big or little. I think I'm going to wrap soon, so I'm going to ask, what would I regret not reporting per the tasking, and in truth only, about this target? That you missed it, quote unquote. Bearing witness. To give of these things freely. To share, not conquer. and then pop, I'm out. Wow. So before I look at this target, I'm just going to say my final feedback. This is obviously esoteric, and this feels like simulation theory. This feels like exploring whether or not we're in a simulation. This feels like what is reality made of, and like I dipped through the layers. So, yeah, I can't wait to find out what this is, but I feel like it was all just very groovy and spacey, and sort of seeing like where layers of reality begin and end, and how, my favorite part was the reflection in the insect eye of the monoliths with the edges of light, and with just having a clairsentience of knowing that the edges defined the boundaries of that reality, and seeing them crack open from time to time and just emit stars. I don't know what that's all about. If I had to guess, I'd say I just remote viewed the process of how the universe itself continues birthing itself in new, different ways, and how it utilizes every point on the fractal to do that. This felt like entropy, but at the same time, like highly ordered exploration of consciousness. This one was fun. End session.